Welcome everybody, welcome to The Unexpected Guest. My name is John Clese and I'm coming to you from the great city of Chicago here on the shores of Lake Michigan. And those of you that watched my show before know that I'm always trying to cook healthy for you, but today I'm very excited because it's the first show where we're going to do some things that you should make on the day that I call your cheat day. Some people are like, don't call it cheat because that makes it sound like you're bad all week long, but let's face it, if you're watching your weight all week long and you eat a lot of sweets or whatever you want on the weekend, it does feel like a cheat day. So for me, that's incredibly important that you do that you have your cheat day. So today we're actually going to make a apple tart, or actually in French, wait, I'm going to pronounce it, tarte aux pommes. Let me say it one more time.
Tarte aux pommes.
Tarte aux pommes, which is an apple tart that we're going to make with Granny Smith apples. And then it has a glaze on top, and then we're going to pair that with some nice Riesling wine at the end of the show. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually make the pastry tart. And for that, you're going to need a food processor. So I'm just going to move this out of the way. Oh, that's annoying. I'm going to cut that up. But let me say it one more time.
Tarte aux pommes.
Tarte aux pommes. I love it. All right, I'm going to cut that down. I think I know how to say
All right,
it. This is a food processor. I'm going to turn it around because if you don't have one and you're new to cooking, you need to get this one. This is a new one that I got actually over Christmas. And I really love this one. There's a couple of reasons I'll show you when I'm doing it why I love it. But get yourself a good one. You really need it for pie doughs. It's amazing. Also, you can make soups in it, etc. You can dump all the stuff in and twirl it all around, and it's really nice. So, all right. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to get this top off. I don't like that part about it. And we're using this. We're using this blade today. You're not using your pastry blade. And here's one of the reasons I like this one. Listen, ready? It clicks in. So the great thing about this is when you dump your stuff out, it doesn't come off. And that is a big problem with a lot of food processors. So, all right, we're going to start with that. And this is a very simple, this is actually another French word. This is a pâté sucré, which is basically, it's a sweeter pastry tart that we're going to make today. Flour, butter, sugar, a little bit of egg. Oh, I forgot my egg. Hold on. No matter how much I think I've got everything ready, I don't. Of course, I only need one egg, but I'm going to bring all the eggs out. And we're going to need one egg yolk for this today. So let's start out. So the first thing, I have a messy, messy kitchen here. Oh, I'm going to put my, look at this. What do you think, Gap? Even though it's cold outside, I got all my new Gap clothes for the spring, but I don't want to ruin my outfit, so I'm going to put on my little chef's jacket while we get started with this. I know my camera doesn't think, but I'm wearing the green for the apples, so. Anyway, but you should wear this because the flour gets all over the place, so. All right, I don't have a mirror on set. We lost everybody with the budget cuts, so hopefully I look fine. All right, so what we're going to start out with is 2 cups of butter. 2 cups of butter. 2 cups of flour, and I've got some flour here. You don't have to chill the flour. Some people actually chill the flour. And here's a big difference. When you're baking cakes and when you're baking cookies, you want everything at room temperature. When you're making pie crust, you want everything as cold as possible. And as we go through this process, I'll tell you why. So I've got 2 cups of flour. That's all we need for that. Put that down here. 2 cups of flour. We have 1 tablespoon of sugar, which I've already measured out here. 1 tablespoon of sugar. Now, I actually add the zest of 1 lemon. I think this is great for this tart. I think lemon goes really well with apples. I can't get that little piece off. Here is a microplaner. These things are incredibly handy for cheese, for ginger, for nutmeg or whatever it is. So here you go. Here's the lemon. You're just going to take this across the top. You're going to scrape all this off. You don't want to go too far into the white because that's the pith, because that's a little bit bitter. So we're just going to take this all off and we're going to stick it right, we're going to stick it right into the flour. And so you get all these nice lemon oil, you know, it flavors all of the flour, which is beautiful. And gives it a nice little, you know, I mean, it's just a little essence of lemon when you actually bite into it. I like to put nutmeg in as well. So use a little bit of nutmeg. And use real nutmeg. Don't use the ground nutmeg already. It's much better when it's fresh. So this is actually like, I've used this a little bit. So I'm using the same microplaner that I used for the lemon zest. And we're going to grate this up. You know, and if I were to measure this, I'd say Oh, less than 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, unless you like a lot of nutmeg. All right, so the nutmeg goes in. I'm also going to put a little bit of cinnamon. And cinnamon, let's just say, well, here's 1/4 teaspoon. I'm not going to do too much. A little bit more than 1/4 teaspoon. Okay. And I need a pinch of salt. Now, lots of times I like to use kosher salt because I like the intensity of the saltiness. It's not as salty as iodized salt. But when I bake, I always use the iodized salt because if you're if the heavy granular of the salt does not dissolve and you go to roll out your dough, you could rip it. So you want to just use a little 2 pinches of salt. So that's the regular iodized salt. So before I do anything else, I'm going to pulse this up because I just want to get the flavors of the lemon and the cinnamon and the nutmeg all mixed together and make sure I haven't forgotten anything. Looking at all my notes here. Okay, I'm going to pulse this a little bit. We'll actually twirl it around. Not really much of a pulse. I'm going to turn on high then. Woo. Sometimes the flour goes up the side. Okay, well, that's good enough because we're going to pulse this some more. All right, so now I've got that done. And I don't have smell-o-vision yet, but if I did, you would smell the lemon. And of course, I have left the butter in the refrigerator where it belongs. I'm going to get the butter out. Now, the butter, I do want to show you this. Let me make a little room over here. I need a big, I'll tell you, no matter how big your counter is, you always want a bigger counter. I'm going to put this over here. I'm going to take this off for a second because I want to show you this is really important. The butter needs to be cold. Butter needs to be ice cold. And this is the critical part of making your pie dough flaky. And not just because you're a flake, but because you want it to be flaky. You don't want it solid. So this is what happens so that you all understand why it needs to be cold. When the pie dough is baking, the butter melts, the little chunks of butter melt, it releases steam, and you get little air pockets. So when you crunch down on the tart, when you crunch down on the dough, it's crunchy and it's flaky. But in order to do that, you don't want this to be soft, otherwise it doesn't have any air pockets. So what I do is I just take a knife, I cut this in half, and again I want to touch the butter as little as possible. I'm going to cut it again in quarters. I've now got this in quarters. Oh, and I should say this is a 1.5 sticks of butter. This is what is that? 12 tablespoons of butter. And actually, for those of you that are following, if you look down below my video, there is a link to my blog, Eat 300 blog, and that's where you can get all of the recipes for what I'm making here. So if you want to go buy everything and then make it with me, you need to go over to the blog site to check out the recipe. So now I'm going to cut this up, and again, touch it as minimally as possible. Now I'm going to stick it into the food. Well, let me cut this one up too. So here goes the other one. Quarter it. And actually, I just leave it on the paper because usually it's not so messy, but then I can just lift it up. And I'll stick this back up here so you can see it. Okay, butter goes in. Now I need a rag. Find a rag. And here's a mistake that I used to make. I used to put all of the liquid in here as well. And then as I've been doing more and more dough, I've realized a lot of people have said, and it's true, is you do the liquid, the water, off out of the pastry thing. You do it by hand, and it makes for much flakier crust. So I've got 1.5 sticks of butter in here. I got my dough. I'm going to pulse this around. In the past, or a lot of recipes will tell you to do it to like a cornmeal texture. Don't. That's not true. You want to do it to it's actually bigger than a cornmeal. You want chunks of butter in there. So I'm going to pulse this. I'm not going to tell you how many times. You just got to feel it. You got to look at it. You don't want it too much. Okay, now I'll show you what that looks like. It's not quite done yet because I'm going to add the egg yolk. That is the one piece of liquid that I'd like to do inside my food processor. So here, don't stick your fingers in here. So here's what we have now in terms of, there's still some big chunks of butter, right? That's a big chunk. That is not cornmeal size. Okay, see that? All right, now I'm going to use 1 egg yolk. Hold on. I was not prepared. I thought I was more prepared. I've got a new cameraman that I'm working with, and It's a little stressful. I've gone through 3 sets of cameramen. You think I'm difficult to work with? I did. That was not a question. All right, here we go. So we got 1 egg yolk goes in here. And again, you'll see lots of different dough recipes. Some use shortening, which is fine for pie dough. I actually like the all butter, but shortening is good too. Shortening, a lot of good recipes I like have actually shortening and butter. All right, so now we're gonna pulse this again. Now we're gonna bring the butter to where we want it to be. And I also just want that egg to be mixed around a little bit. All right, let's see, one more. Let's see. Woo! Don't overdo it. Okay, there we go. It's just on the end. All right, so put this down here. So this is the consistency that we have now. It's a little bit like cornmeal, but you still got some chunks in there, and it's cold, which is perfect. All right, now we're gonna take our flour, we're gonna take this out of here, put this down below. Anyway, here we go. Look how beautiful that is. It doesn't fall out. Now watch me knock it out. Okay. Now, you don't have to get every little piece out, but I am going to pop this out because sometimes there gets a little bit of butter on here. Now, you're going to use up to 6 tablespoons of water to into your dough. And I've also got the old-fashioned pastry cutters that your grandmothers probably used to use. And that's actually the motion. that's the motion right there. Oh my Lord. Okay, so up to, I'm just double check. I've mixed a couple of recipes together over the years to make sure that I get this right. Blah, blah, blah. Up to 6. I've got an egg yolk. This recipe originally had 6 tablespoons, but I'm only going to start with 4 because I have the egg yolk in there, which adds a little moisture. Again, this is ice water. This needs to be ice cold, okay? Everything's cold. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got 4 of those, and then this is the motion that you want to mix this in with. Mix, mix. And again, you're not touching the bowl. And you're just cutting the butter up into layers so that it's all in there. The flour's getting coated with the fat. Or I should say the fat's getting coated with the flour. Well, I guess they're both doing it, aren't they?
Do it.
Do it. Yeah, get a little bit of muscle in here. All right, so you're going to cut that up. See how that's starting to stick? So that looks pretty good, but I've still got stuff in the bottom. I'm going to probably add another tablespoon. But this is nice, and this is really, see how that's all flaky? That's going to make a big difference when you roll out your dough, or actually say when you eat it. Now, don't touch this. So just take your knife, cut that out. Now here's where I am going to touch it because I want to see if it holds together. Actually, that's pretty good. Maybe I don't. I made it this morning and I actually needed 5. And again, this all depends on the temperature and the humidity that's in your house, etc. And I'm surprised that's a little bit different than it was this morning, but what do you know? I used 5 this morning, but that's only 4. So now what we do is, okay, that works. Now what you do, now you do touch it. And now you're going to, you know what, it needs, I can tell, darn it, I know it needs 1 more, I can tell. I'm going to do 1 more. But it's okay, it can handle it. I'm going to recut this up. And you would be amazed at how just 1 tablespoon takes it to the other side. So, or it comes out of the side. Now, actually this is, and one thing I should have remembered from this morning, when it really starts to pile up on your thing, that's actually the consistency. Look at that, it's just sort of holding together and stacking itself up. So that's how I know. Now I remember, I need to write that in my cookbook.